Hello, everyone, and welcome to another special by Pandemonia and myself. We're going to be discussing some of the cards revealed over the last day and a bit. We're on the 3rd of December now, pretty much a day before the final reveal stream, and we're going to be covering a lot of these Kobolds and Catacomb cards with our first impressions. So let's jump right into it. The first card we're going to be covering is a priest spell, Twilights Call. This is a 3 mana rare spell, and it reads Summon 1/1 copies of 2 friendly Death Rattle minions that died this game. So, it has a picture of a dragon on, but I can't really see this being much of a Dragon Priest card. It definitely seems to lend itself more towards decks that want to play cards like Obsidian Statue. That seems like one of the better death rattles you can get because it'll actually kill a minion. Or even just as maybe a card draw engine to bring back stuff like Blood Mage Stalnos, Loot Hoarder, those kind of cards. What are your thoughts? Like, where do you see this kind of card fitting in, if anywhere, Panamonia?
Uh, it's the card that as soon as I saw it, it immediately screams that they're trying to push Quest Priest. Whether Quest Priest becomes an actual a good competitive deck is yet to be seen. It's definitely 3 mana to summon 2 copies. It's definitely got quite a lot of potential value. Obviously, with cards like you say, with like Loot Hoarder, we can get extra card draw, or even if you somehow manage to pull off cards like Cairn, or
Yeah.
other
So,
value-based death rattles.
so what's the curve here? Like, Crystalline Oracle into Loot Hoarder into Twilight's Call to bring them both back. Like, that's the only way you
Uh,
ever really play Twilight's Call on curve, and which is a pretty weak play. I mean, 3 mana for 2/2 stats is pretty bad, so you really need to get good value from the Death Rattle. I mean, the important thing there is that you're counting 4 towards your quest, but you have to actually play your quest as well at some point there. So, I
you
don't know if
could
this
try and
is.
set up later
Yeah.
as like a combo, sort of a late game. Then when you run mainly mid to high value death rattle targets. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not quite. I'm just trying to think. Besides Ken, what other really beefy, like good death rattles are there that you would want to do this on? I mean,
Um,
Oracle gets value.
yeah, Shifting Shade is kind of similar in terms of the value you get.
Yeah,
But I mean,
but because it's random and not.
there's no real like Sylvanas. Like, when you think of good death rattles, I still always think of Sylvanas. Uh, is
Yeah.
kind of the card
Yep.
that I tend to lead directly towards. Um,
So, and the fact that obviously it's random, so that's also another issue. Do you just put in a lot of death rattles and you don't mind any, or do you limit the number of death rattles so that you try to guarantee the ones you're getting back?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I mean, Mirage Caller didn't see much play, and I mean that was a 3 mana 2/3 that basically pulled no, it copied one in play.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so you could at least control it
So there's
to a
Bone
degree.
Drake. That's the other high value death rattle in the sense that you get a dragon to your hand, which can be kind of powerful.
Do you want to be playing Bone
I
Drake in a
mean,
deck?
Deathwing Dragon Lord.
Okay, but if you're playing Deathwing and it's dying,
Yeah, you likely got all your death rattles on the board, or all your dragons on the board already.
well, you're in a good position usually if you're not dead.
Yeah,
So I don't know. It might find a place. I mean, it might. Who knows? It might make Quest Priest a thing just because adding 2 to the quest count
yeah. It's
might be
basically
irrelevant.
it's basically paying 3 mana to get 2 for your quest count. Oh, okay. Currently, where this card would be played is Breakfast Priest. Um,
It's the newer
with
Tempest.
the egg. Man, I entirely forgot its name.
Oh
Even though I've been
yes,
playing Breakfast
Never saw
Priest,
egg.
Devilsaur Egg, and Meat Wagon. Twilight's Call would work with those.
Okay.
Legitimately, paying 3 mana for a 1/1 copy of the egg is actually pretty good.
Or
Um,
even a Meat Wagon.
and Meat Wagon, yeah, Meat Wagon will get you the other egg from the deck.
Yeah. So I mean, that's actually potential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Breakfast Priest card. That's not a statement I thought I would likely be making today. I mean, maybe Breakfast Priest could even become the Quest Priest, but I'm not sure about that. I think that's trying to push it a little bit too
Let's just
much.
calm down right now. Let's just
Yeah,
take a deep breath.
yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next card, we have a Mage Legendary, Dragon Kolja Alana. 9 mana, 3/3 minion. That reads Battle Cry. Summon a 5/5 dragon for each spell you cast this game that cost 5 or more. So this is getting a lot of people excited. Oh, I'm gonna get like 30 stats for my 6 dragons, and okay, calm down is kind of my immediate reaction to that. How many 5 mana cost spells do you really want to have in your deck? And how many can you realistically put in your deck without just dying in the early game to anything? So, we're talking like Flame Strike, Blizzard, those are pretty common
Meteor,
possibilities. Meteor, Firelands
Kabbalist
Portal for
2.
now. I
Yeah,
literally don't think you can play Kabbalist Tome in a deck like that. It just seems way too greedy.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, besides that, especially your manual sweepers. So realistically, if you want to play this on curve and still get, I think 2 to 3 spells that cost more than 5 is makes the card pretty good because you don't want 9 mana for 8/8 stats. I think 9 mana for 13/13 for 13/13 stats is pretty good.
yeah,
Obviously, you're still obviously a bit weak to AoE.
yeah, but importantly, the minions that are summoned are dragons, so they avoid Dragonfire Potion. They don't
Yeah,
avoid Shadow Reaper Anduin though. Dragoncaller Alana herself will survive to Shadow Reaper Anduin, but if your opponent's response to your 9 mana play was just to Shadow Reaper Anduin most of the value away from you, you're not going to be pretty happy about that. It seems like we've lost
no,
Pandemonia for it. Oh, okay,
with
there we go. We got him back now.
with all these strong battle cards at high mana costs, these are sort of nerfs to the evolve sort of mechanics and anything that summons things that cost 9. Because
Yep.
if you get a 9 mana 3/3 of any of those effects, or like Medivh, you're not happy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sad to get a 5 mana 3/3. You know.
I mean, at least with Medivh, there's not a lot of 9 mana spells, so
Yeah,
that's
but
it's
like evolve shenanigans though
yeah,
is
evolve and
definitely
devolve. They're definitely high or low rolls respectively. So
yeah
it also makes devolve a bit stronger because if you're
yeah
devolving like big priests 10 drops, you can devolve them into this.
yeah, and you feel pretty good.
Yeah, and you will feel pretty good. But there's also a lot of good
So
9 drops. So I mean, it definitely makes the pool more complicated and gives more high and low rolls to evolve and devolve effects. But overall, I think this card would require a really slow meta for Dragoncaller Alana to be really worth it. You need to be getting
yeah
it needs like you need to be able to play it on a board comfortably where you're not dying. And right now, I'm not sure if that's gonna really work for Mage, especially if Ice Block gets rotated into the Hall of Fame, then that's
next
going to
year
make a card like Dragoncaller Alana probably worse, unless
yeah
Mage gets some other kind of defensive tools to allow it to survive, to have these kind of greedy turns.
yeah definitely and I mean as you've said with a lot of these it's important to always note with these really big drops is even though the affects the board immediately it doesn't stop your none of them have taunt or any effects that delay your opponent. So like it's a case
Yeah.
of if you're dead you're dead. If your opponent has enough big minions to trade efficiently with your board they can still do it. It doesn't I don't know what the word is, but yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, it doesn't prevent you from dying in any way. The
Yep.
other important thing, and one of the reasons a card like Syndragosa failed as well, was just that just getting stats for Mage isn't really worth it that much because so many of Mage's plans are built around the burn. So
Yeah.
I'd rather just Alexstrasza them on 9 and then kill them the turn afterwards rather than play Dragoncaller Alana. And that's a pretty important thing. If I'm gonna have Ice Block set up, that's much rather gonna be my game plan than Dragoncaller Alana.
And that's probably what they want to change with trying to like with the most likely the rotation of Ice Block to Hall of
Hall of
Fame
Fame.
next year.
Yeah, which is going to leave Mage in a pretty weak position. But anyway, we'll see
Yes.
by that time what Mage gets as a replacement for it. So moving on to another Mage card, one that's obviously meant to synergize with Dragoncaller Alana, and this is Dragon's Fury. So it's a 5 mana spell, so another way to trigger or to get an extra dragon out of Dragoncaller Alana, and it is an epic spell. It reads Reveal a spell from your deck, deal damage equal to its cost to all minions. So not a joust kind of spell effect like we saw in Raven Familiar, just basically dealing damage equal to that spell's cost. So it's another AoE. If your deck is packed with some of those later game AoE spells, Dragon's Fury is going to be really good to deal a bunch of AoE. The thing is that any mage deck that wants to be defensive is going to rely on secrets. So at the
Yeah.
lowest possible you're gonna have at least secrets being there, and
Arcane Intellect as well.
yeah, and
Because
arcane
I mean,
intellect.
maybe Frostbolt. That's another big question. If you
Like
want to run a
Frostbolt
card like
is
this,
entirely cuttable, but the three
yeah.
mana spells are like Frost Nova, Secrets, Arcane Intellect. Those are not really cuttable. Primordial Glyph is probably the biggest,
Oh
like
yes,
two
that's
mana spell that's hard to cut as well.
Uh, I mean, because 5 mana, if you look, okay, so these cards always look okay. 5 mana, deal 1 damage to all minions is obviously very bad. So you never want to reveal a
Yeah,
1 mana spell. 2 mana spell, you basically just played an expensive volcanic potion, right?
yeah, very expensive one.
A very expensive. So basically, 3 mana. I mean, for I mean 3 damage, you start getting into decent territory in terms of, comparable. It reminds me of Excavated Evil in a
Yeah,
way.
and I think three is really the important part as well because when you're playing against mage, three is really what you want to play around as well, because three is such a common cost for spells in the deck. You know, we already went through them: the Secrets, Frost Nova,
Yeah.
Arcane Intellect. So if let's say you want to protect your board against Dragon's Fury, going into the first days of Kobolds and Catacombs, you want to play it probably around three. Damage AoE if you can, rather than being too greedy and trying to play around 4 or 5.
Yeah, I mean, like, because I think Dragon Furies for 3 is probably what makes it okay. It's pretty good, like decent still. Then obviously anything above that is pretty nutty. I mean, dealing 4 damage AE for 5 mana is pretty crazy.
So
I think.
the biggest problem I have with three is to get three to be good, right? You Because this is symmetrical effect, which is not something we see very often from mages.
Yeah.
For three to be good, it's gonna be have to like not clear your minions or something because mage just has better options. I'd rather play Blizzard on 6, um, then and not have my board die as well. And if you're playing Dragon's Fury, you also need to have early minions in your deck so you're not pulling the cheap spells. So now you're kind of in a conundrum where like I've got early minions, but then I'm gonna AoE my own early minions with Dragon's Fury. So that's kind of the weird part for this. I think it really needs to be like I do nothing until turn 5 except draw and maybe
Like
develop secrets, archaeologists, Medivh's Valet, those kind of things, and then you play Dragon's
Doomsayer.
Fury. Doomsayer, yeah.
I mean, it kind of, in a way, I look at it in a slower control mage. It probably fulfills a similar role as like your 5 drop, your 5 mana turn of Frost Nova Doomsayer. This is another potential option on
It's
turn 5.
it's definitely worse than Frost Nova
No,
Doomsayer,
obviously,
though.
no. Obviously, it's worse, but I'm saying this is another 5 mana
Yeah,
option because sometimes you need that. You need that turn to store just before Blizzard, just before Flame Strike.
yeah. What it could do is maybe bring back some kind of Highlander mage, right? Just giving you more AoE options means that you can now play more singleton deck. But I mean, the only
The
real
risk then,
reward for playing that kind of deck is Inkmaster Solia and Kazakus, and I'm not sure either one of those cards are really worth it.
and also the problem is if you run a singleton deck, then you almost guaranteed want to run a couple more spells that are cheaper, right? You
Well,
almost,
maybe not, but the point is like you're also only running one ice block, which is a problem.
yeah. So we'll see. It, I mean, if anything, I think this does go into a control mage sort of shell.
Yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
mean that seems pretty obvious, especially with
yeah.
Dragon Kolja Alana. But I'm not sure that this kind of a control dragon themed, even though it doesn't really involve dragons, mage is going to be particularly viable.
Yeah.
I do want to point out though that this little guy in the corner of the art is super cute. The one like the closer looking like dragony thing. I don't even know what it is, but
The dragony
super
thing.
cute.
It's like, is that a kobold?
Is it a kobold? Yeah, it
It's a
might be a
toasty,
kobold getting
like a
burnt
toasty
by the
kobold.
dragon's flame.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks
I
super
didn't
cute.
even notice that.
But anyway,
Yeah.
moving on to
Moving
another
on.
dragon themed thing, kind of. Dragon Hatcher is a 9
Oh
mana
wow.
2/4 epic minion. At the end of your turn, recruit a dragon. So bring a
I think
dragon from your deck. I mean, the immediate thought is like, Malygos, Ysera. You have to bring these big dragons that have useful effects. The problem is because it's end of turn, you can't actually do anything with the Malygos that turn. You can't do anything with the Ysera that turn. You can't, and the Ysera, for instance, won't even give you a card.
so. The worst part about this card is at 9 mana, most dragons you want, you could probably it's probably just better on turn 9 to play Ysera. To
Yes.
play Malagos.
This is basically just a way of not having to draw them.
Yeah, 9 mana 2/4. I'm
Yeah, the
not
stats are
so.
irrelevant, kind of.
Yeah,
Like 9
but
mana
also
2
the
4
fact is that
doesn't do anything.
the fact that recruit a dragon, that a lot of times you're gonna have cheaper dragons in your deck as well.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're playing this, especially the same priest, you're running Duskbreaker, you're running Operative,
Yeah,
and
this is
those you
not
don't.
a Dragon Priest card. Like,
Yeah,
not at all. Never, never, never.
I'm saying like, what dragon deck wants this card
It's
though
not
is
a
the question.
dragon deck that wants it. It's a deck that wants to tutor very specific dragons.
Yeah,
Or if you want to tutor your Deathwing Dragon Lord,
yeah,
your original normal Deathwing. Like it's a
yeah.
big deck card. It's not a um
But you could just play that card anyway. I mean,
no,
okay,
but
obviously,
yeah, for big Druid it's playable. For big Priest it's not because their mechanic wants to resurrect them, and this just puts a shitty minion in your resurrect pool. But for like
yeah,
big Druid, you could play this and then have a better chance of bringing your Deathwing Dragonlord or something. But most of the time, yes, you'd rather just play them or any other better option, especially considering, as a Druid, you can just play Ultimate Infestation to get towards drawing your dragons.
yeah, yeah. I'm not. So yeah,
No,
I'm not a believer in this guy.
no. He is going to be recruiting very little in this expansion. Moving on, and speaking of Druid things, we have Ironwood Golem. It's a 4 mana 3/6 common minion with Taunt. So that's pretty good looking stats, but the downside is it can only attack if you have 3 or more armor. So how much is that downside really a downside?
So like, I mean, in a slower Jade or Ramp Druid, I honestly don't think it's that much of downside because you really don't need to be attacking that early. You don't need to be pushing that damage because when you win, you're winning by beating their face with really large things. Uh, Obviously, you don't want to play a card like this in aggro Druid or a more mid-range tempo-based Druid because attacking is quite important in those decks. Whether I mean, now the question is it worth that extra one house stats playing this over Sentient Shield Master, or playing this over Tar Creeper? Those are the two cards that
Hmm.
kind of, I think, come to your mind. Is this worth playing over it?
Yeah, and obviously with Tar Creeper, if you can fulfill the criteria of having 3 or more armor, it's considerably better because one of the biggest issues with Tar Creeper that we see, and one of the reasons it's actually not that good in control decks and it's better in aggro decks, is because it's very important for you to have initiative when you're trading your minions, to be able to choose how you trade. And with Ironwood Golem and Tar Creeper, you kind of give the initiative to your opponent. They can set up the board as favorably as possible to trade into these things. And that's why in other decks like Aggro Druid or Tempo Rogue, where we see Tar Creeper, it's useful because it protects the other minions that then can be used to trade with initiative. So, like, that's really what it's about. It's about who has initiative on the trades, and it's kind of why I think the downside of Ironwood Golem is a lot bigger than most people realize.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why I say I don't think it will really see that much play. Like I say, Senjin Shield Master, Tar Keeper, I think are still better options for the meanwhile.
Maybe.
Uh,
But I think we can look at the next Druid card as well, which is kind of specifically tying in with the Ironwood Golem.
I
It is
suppose, yeah,
Okin Summons. It's a 4 mana Druid spell. It reads gain 6 armor and recruit a minion that costs 4 or less. So, I mean, if you recruit the Ironwood Golem, it will be able to attack
yeah,
after summoning sickness because you will have 6 armor. And all of a sudden, then the like Oaken Summons is really powerful if you're pulling Ironwood Golem, but the problem is that once again that's 4 or less. So now you need to
yeah.
find a way to have some kind of deck that allows you to skip to turn 4. In your if we look back to like probably Naxxramas Ramp Druid, you had like no 4 drops. You just had like you just went like Wild Growth into 4 drops. That was
Shade.
your plan. Yeah,
Also, you had
or Shade.
Shades.
Yes, if it was Coin Wild Growth, then you had Shade. But the point is, you had no real minions before 4. Like you could play without Shades. If we took Shade out of the equation because Shade was just a powerful card, you were basically playing the deck with no early drops, right?
What
And
was
that
Keep of the Grove?
uh, Yeah,
which
Keeper of
is
the
which
Grove
was
is
a
a
four
four.
drop.
Yes, but
Yeah.
I'm saying there's no early drops. It's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the four drops. Like you were even looking at like Senjins when you were playing the taunt versions of the deck. So the point is, you can
Yeah.
kind of skip to four as a druid, but it's obviously not that consistent because you have to hit the wild growth. It's very dependent on hitting that,
Yeah.
and you can kind of we have cards like Jade Blossom to help get there, instead. But I don't know. Okin Summons, like, how many four drops do you really want to put in any deck that's ramping hard anyway? Like, there's none really. Like, you put Bonds and um,
My keeper.
Maya Keeper. Yeah, Maya Keeper's. If your deck wants to keep ramping, that's the problem. You want to play Maya Keeper, and then Okin Summons is pretty bad.
I mean, it's always the option of what you Oaken summons, and in a you don't mind running cards like Doomsayer. You put a Doomsayer, and then it's a case of you gain 6 armor and you gain essentially the 7 health of Doomsayer. So I mean, it is
Mm,
a staller. It can potentially stall the board against more aggressive decks if that becomes a problem.
yeah, but just playing a Doomsayer on turn 4 is quite weak alone. Because
Yeah,
usually your opponent's probably going to have a decent board at that point. They're just going to develop
yeah,
their board
that's
further, and
true.
then the 6
Yeah,
armor is not going to matter that much. I think really this is looking for some deck that basically starts its curve at 4 and plays like maybe some taunts, like that, um, the Ironwood Golem that we just saw. So, playing some cards like that. You need to probably have at least 3 or 4 if you're playing one copy of Oaken Summons, you probably have to have at least three good minions that you want to pull. If you're playing two copies, it's probably at least four to
like
avoid
Chillwind
it being
Yetis.
a dead card. Yeah, Chillwind Yeti is not a good option to pull. You want something that'll have slightly more immediate board impact.
Senjin and the other dude are probably the best. Or maybe even Tar Creeper's not the worst either, I don't think.
Yeah, there's no Ironbark Golems to pull any. I mean, sorry, not Ironbark. There's no Arcane Golems to pull anymore, which would have actually been good
Yeah.
for the
Oh,
charge
yeah.
effect.
You can pull Wolf Rider. Cup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that doesn't seem good enough. But yeah, you could also just maybe have some like poisonous minions, like the gastropod, or I don't know. That it's stretching at this
Okay.
point. The problem is that four or less, right? The moment you're putting in any
Yeah.
minions that cost less than three, probably on this, you're getting a bad deal. So yeah,
Yeah.
that is something you have to worry about. In wild though, I mean, Shade actually pulling Shade of Naxxramas is probably pretty good.
Yeah, that good,
For instance,
definitely.
in this kind of a ramp deck. But anyway, moving on to something more interesting, we have King's Bane. So get out your Blade Flurry died for this memes. This is a rogue weapon, and it's a 1 mana weapon. It's a 1/3. It is the rogue legendary weapon, and it's Death Rattle. Shuffle this into your deck. It keeps any enchantments, which basically means any like weapon buffs. Uh, I assume Naga Corsair works as well as and Captain Greenskin work as well as like
Yeah.
deadly poison and stuff. So 1 mana 1/3 weapon, not too bad to help fight in the early game. Obviously, kind of clashes a little bit with Rogue's base weapon, but this is really gets value once you start putting extra weapon buffs on it. Deadly poison. All of a sudden, when
Yeah.
you draw it the second time, it's a 1 mana 3/3 weapon. Naga Corsair, that also could make it a 2/3 weapon. Greenskin makes it a 2/4 weapon. You got all these things, and then there's also cards like Envenom, which can give it
Oh, yes.
poisonous, and the Lifesteal one that gives it
Leech,
Lifesteal.
leech and
Le-
poison or something.
yeah, Leeching Poison. I think the big problem is that, sure, putting this back in your deck is great, but really you always want it on turn 1 because that's really when it has the most effect. The big problem for Rogue is the more you keep using your weapon to trade and deal with the board, the lower your health total gets, and the less you can use your weapon in the future. So then drawing a weapon later in the game is actually worse for you than drawing any other card in your deck because all of a sudden you can't actually use that weapon positively. You would need to start using it to go to face, and I'm not sure necessarily it's going to be the best value then. It can lead to some crazy lethal outs. If you've deadly poisoned it before, and then you have like Leroy Kingsbane that gives you some extra damage on the out. So I mean, I think it's a good card. I think it definitely see play. I actually think it's more of a Miracle Rogue card. Or the one deck that I could see it played in was one variation of Tempo Rogue that we saw for a while was the UK Rogue. Basically running cards like Dread Corsair, Deadly Poison, the Shadow Blade, those kind of cards. And King's Bane kind of
Right.
fits into that deck because that deck had extra weapon buffs to help facilitate the Dread Corsairs being powerful. And then King's Bane is really powerful if you draw it. But I think that deck will also need just some extra card draw probably because adding Kingsbane to your deck is also means when you're drawing it, you're not drawing a Bone Mare,
You're not trying to burn me. Yeah.
which later
Pretty
in the
much.
game is a bad thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. Uh, I mean, my first thought when I saw it, I was like, oh, it's like Lot's Justice. Obviously, it's
Uh,
better. It's
yeah,
potential. Obviously, the longer the game goes on, it's obviously got a lot more potential upside. But in the like you said, just fights for that board quite well. I mean, in against Tempo Rogue, it can kill some early. It might actually be decent to help clear those early minions a bit more efficient than your hero power.
yeah. With Leeching Poison, it could actually be good enough maybe for Miracle Rogue as a life game mechanic because Miracle Rogue tends to draw enough of its deck that drawing the one mana weapon is not so much of a downside because the Miracle Rogue can draw more aggressively.
But do you
Maybe.
really want to be playing Leeching Poison in your deck, though? Comes the
Yeah, I know, especially when you've got all the
question.
other spell options like the secrets now and these
Yeah.
other kind of cards.
But we'll see. It definitely seems it has potential power.
Yeah, I think its weapon-based power for Tempo Rogue is probably largely in that UK Rogue deck. Although honestly, yeah, once again, just having a 1/3 weapon is pretty decent, and maybe we just replace Cold Bloods with Deadly Poisons in the deck overall
Yeah, it's
because
possible.
they have some more value going later. Okay, because if you draw this and it is a 3/3 weapon, that is 9 damage for 1 mana over 3 turns. So
Yeah.
it's pretty good. Uh, moving on to a Paladin card, affectionately titled Dude from Below by Sottle. Thing from Below
As,
was also
as,
the very first thing that stuck out to me when I saw this card. It is a 6 mana 5/5. It's called Crystal Lion. It's a rare and it has Divine Shield. Costs 1 less for each Silver Hand recruit you control. So obviously you can see the thing from below kind of similarities already. 6 mana 5/5 with uh, what's it like a base mechanic on this one has divine shield as opposed to taunt,
yeah.
and it also costs less based on a class specific thing, which in this case is silverhand recruits. The big difference is this is not like costs one less for each silverhand recruit you've summoned. I think it would be really good if that was the case, but it's
Yes.
costs one less for each silverhand recruit you control.
Which is a
So
problem at times.
yeah, how many silverhand recruits do you realistically have on the board, Pandemonia?
Uh, Usually one, maybe two, especially if you're playing like a mid range, and a more earlier mid range orientated like Murloc Paladin. You generally got Murlocs, and then also this has negative synergy with Murloc Paladin because of
Valfin.
Valspine Inquisitor. A Valfin Inquisitor
Yeah, Valfin.
obviously changes your hero power. So this is obviously the trying to build that deck of dudes matter.
Yeah,
I
the divine shield, uh,
dudes.
the divine shield, dude, paladin and standard with working with Bolvar and stuff, right?
Yeah, uh,
That's kind of the idea. Stand against darkness is the obvious card that
that's what
like
I'm saying.
you play
Yeah,
stand against darkness and then this
and
costs
have
one
one dude
mana.
play. And if you had one mana, if you
Well,
had
yeah,
one dude
okay, but
play,
let's
you
just
could play
talk
for
about like
free.
on 6 mana you can just play stand against darkness and this, and the stand against darkness essentially came for free, but it still costs you a card in your hand, so
Yeah, like
it's not really free.
nothing is really. Yeah,
Also,
it's no.
in the current meta, 1/1s are kind of bad. Like
Yes, they
you
die too
really
much.
don't want to have 1/1s on the board. They just get value traded by fireflies for days. They
My
just
hero powers.
the hero powers. They're just really bad right now. So
Yeah,
if your game plan involves getting 1/1s on the board and having them stick, that's a problem.
it is. I mean, literally all the top tier classes now have super efficient ways. If I just top of my head, Druid obviously has the hero power and swipe. Uh, what's it? A priest
Primordial
has
Drake
spirit.
if it's big druid. Anyway,
Sorry.
Primordial
Yeah, they have
Drake if
Primal
it's big
Drake.
druid.
I mean, Priest has Spirit Lash comes to mind immediately.
Also, Druid just has Spreading Plague, so if you have a
Oh
bunch of
yes,
1/1s on the board, that's bad for you anyway.
this is true as well. Yeah. So we'll see if this. I don't know. I would have liked, for each silver hand recruit you had summoned. This would have actually been pretty good. I think this probably would have been as good as Thing from Below, if not maybe better.
I think if it was each Silverhand recruit summon from your hero power, it would be
Yeah.
reasonable for them to do it like that. The problem is cards like Muster for Battle and Wild. Like,
Oh
how
right.
nuts is this in Wild if you just go Muster for Battle turn 3 into Crystal Lion, like, on turn 4? Like,
Yeah. That would
that's
have been.
pretty nuts. Or coin Muster for Battle into Crystal Lion. That's just stupid. So I
I
think that's
guess.
kind of why they had to do it like this. It had to be about what you control rather than what you've
Yeah.
summoned. If it had been summoned from hero power, it would have been more reasonable, and then it could have been a decent control paladin card. The big problem being that it doesn't
Does that
have
talk?
taunt. Although
Yeah.
honestly, if you get it cheap enough, you can probably play it and Spike Ridge Steed in the same turn, which is really powerful.
But the fact that it's not a continuous decrease in cost, don't unfortunately,
Yeah.
I don't see the scene much play. Like you say, keeping 1/1s on the board currently very difficult.
Very difficult, or very detrimental to you. So yeah.
Yeah.
Not a fan of Crystal Lion. Moving on, we have another weapon. Get out your blade. Your what's Fiery Warax died for this memes. This time around, we have Bladed Gauntlet. It is a 2-mana warrior weapon. I'm sure Pandemonia is extremely excited at the sound of that.
Yeah,
It is
but
an epic, and it is a 0/2 weapon. And it reads, has attack equal to your armor, can't attack heroes. So, definitely not a Pirate Warrior card. So fear not those who hate Pirate Warrior. But how does this kind of card fare in Control Warrior, Pandemonia?
it's good. I mean, the problem is it's because of the mechanic. It's a bit tricky in terms of playing. If you want to play this like fireworks on turn 2, it's going to be quite difficult to immediately gain that armor. So the first thing that pops up to mind is if you want to do this on turn 2, on turn 1, do you really want to play Ironhide?
Yeah.
So in terms of an early game weapon, this doesn't look like it has great potential. But where this looks like it might potentially shine is really late game, where like mid to late game, where you have a whole bunch of armor, let's say in a slower matchup, and all of a sudden you're playing a 2-mana 8/2 weapon that can like kill nearly anything your opponent plays.
Yeah. Obviously, the problem is the more things you kill, the less attack it gets in a way because
Yeah.
you're taking armor damage. Maybe for something like Dead Man's Hand Warrior, it's a way to just infinitely keep killing things.
Yeah.
Make that deck even more laborious.
Is this better than Gorehowl though? Is ultimately the kind of question you've got to ask though, right? Because
probably for Dead Man's Hand Warrior, right? Because
I mean,
you can generate like 200 armor.
Okay, but then you can hit twice with it.
Yeah, but if you Dead Man's Hand it,
Oh, yeah, okay.
you can play it
got
again.
all
Whereas Dead Man's Hand and Gorehowl is not as good because it's so expensive.
No, I guess so. Yeah. So I mean, Dead Man's Hand maybe. It's just the definitely, even though it's 2 mana, it's definitely it's a more late game card though. Like, unfortunately, when I first saw it, I was like, I want this to be a Fiery War Axe, and then I read it carefully, and I was like, no, this is not a Fiery War Axe.
I don't really think. I don't. People are like, oh, they want Fiery War Axe back. I don't really think people do. That would just make Pirate Warrior really good again, and that's all it would really do. Like, it's not Fiery War Axe being back, like in its original form, would not help control decks. Like,
No.
people really like that. This is the better way to kind of try and do that, but the fact that you literally can't do anything when you don't have any armor, and that's when you often need weapons against control deck, against like aggro decks as the control
Yeah.
deck. It's kind of like against aggro decks, you can't kill anything, but you need to kill things, but you can't because you don't have any armor because they've been hitting you, and it just like it seems
Yeah, I mean, we might even see this. I mean, even might have potential in some sort of tempo-based deck. I mean, in a deck
Yeah.
running like Mountain Fire armors, maybe. I'm
yeah,
not.
Mountain
You
Fire
know,
armor. That is
I mean,
definitely I think one way to do it.
and then the things like this just keeps the board clear while your minions keep putting pressure on. I mean,
Yeah.
it's possible, but yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, it's quite an exciting weapon. It's an interesting mechanic, and we'll see how good, like you say, how good it actually does become. Because against aggro, it's pretty bad. The zero attack, obviously, if you have no armor.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of exciting mechanics, everyone really loves summoning Huffer, and now you can summon Huffer twice with To My Side. It's a 6 mana epic spell for Hunter, and it reads Summon an animal companion, or summon 2 if your deck has no minions. So yes, you can get 2 Huffers for 6 mana, but you have to have no minions in your deck. I think the or part is a bit of a problem for me.
Yeah, so you start off with break down this card. 6 mana to summon Animal Companion. Obviously, it's bad because Animal Companion is just 3 mana. Then the second part, the or 2. Okay, so you pay double the cost of Animal Companion to summon 2, which is great in one card. But then
Because
your deck has.
well, just on that point, because Hunter is kind of weak on card draw, getting the extra value, even if you're just summoning 2 for 6 mana, which seems fair, is actually pretty good because it's like 2 cards in one. So when you
Yeah,
draw it, it's kind of like drawing 2 cards. But
but
now we get to what it takes to get there.
the problem is that drawback is kind of problematic considering since the beginning of Hearthstone, especially with considering Hunter's hero power. Hunter has always been a very minion based deck. Generally a mid range to aggressive strategy, but they've always been a lot of minions. And
Yeah.
this is where the problem comes in is I mean, this is obviously sort of trying to push Control Hunter, which Blizzard have been trying to do for a while. Like sort of a big priest. I mean, a big hunter like a big spell hunter kind of vibe. But then the problem, really, the question is, do you ever want this card over High Main? And
Yeah.
most of the parts, Savannah High Main is probably still better than 2 Animal Companions. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously,
I mean,
besides the lethal arts of Double Huffer.
or them just having more impact on board with Liak buffing your minions or Misha taunt. So there is definitely some value there. But ultimately, I think the condition is way too much and it's not
Yeah,
really worth. Um, yeah,
cutting High
it's
Mains.
not worth fulfilling for the reward either. So I
Yeah,
think To My Side will remain a meme. Uh, Moving on, we have an Elemental Shaman card here. It's a 2 mana 1/1 Elemental. It's a rare and it reads Battle Cry. Your next Battle Cry this turn triggers twice. So a brand type effect for only the next Battle Cry that you actually play in this turn. And it's a 2
yeah,
mana 1/1 Elemental. So the immediate thing that, I mean, Asmodai talked about when he revealed the card was Doppelgangster Evolve with Murmuring Elemental.
yeah,
Because you get 5 Doppelgangsters basically, and with the Murmuring Elemental, you're getting 1/3/3 cost minion and 5/6 cost minions. But that is now an 8 mana combo that we're talking about. Which,
yeah.
to be fair, sometimes you do hero power and play uh, the Doppelgangster Evolve combo. It's not unreasonable, but the problem is you have to just be holding this in your deck until that point, and having Doppelgangster and Evolve together is hard enough to do sometimes now, regardless of you know
Yeah,
having to now have an extra card in your hand.
and then obviously another potential application is to make Elemental Shaman a deck again.
Yeah,
And this obviously has I think synergies with quite a few of the elemental cards. I mean, like I was joking, Servant of Kalimos or more bigger threats. Blaze Caller is potentially quite a big payoff. Kalimos, what's it? The Stone Golem, the one that summons
yeah,
the
the one that summons the feral spirit type things. I
yeah.
also forget its name, but yeah,
I mean, those are all potentials, but the big problem is, and obviously this is being compared to Bran. The big problem with this card is, so obviously it's not permanent, but also stats wise, Bran is a 3 mana 2/4. Sometimes you would play a 3 mana 2/4 just to fight for the board, whereas you are almost never playing this as a 2 mana 1/1.
yeah, yeah. It is definitely a problem in that. Yeah, you have to combo it on that turn, and the big problem is that you have to hold the card until the turn that you combo it. So now you're basically just holding a card. Maybe for some kind of control uh, Shaman Elemental deck where you're just playing AoE in your first few turns, and then you go for this with some kind of value combo. I saw there was some ridiculous combos that people were suggesting with the 6 mana 7/7, the Grumble Earthbreaker or whatever it's called. Like where you can get 0 mana Kalimosses and weird stuff like that. By doing that with the Firehawk, I think it is, the one that reduces the cost of elemental spell.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, there's some
yeah.
really weird synergy there, but we're talking way too many cards, and unless there's like an OTK combo I'm missing, I'm not sure that that's realistically something you're gonna do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so moving on from that card, it definitely has some kind of combo potential, but I'm not really sure it's gonna be good enough.
And we have to see if the two
Certainly
mana
not.
for 1/1 is worth it. We have to see if the kind of the drawback of it, the
Yeah.
stats, is worth it.
Yeah, the fact that you just have to hold it in your hand until you find that other piece, that's the big thing that sticks out to me.
Yeah.
So moving on to the last card we have for today. This was revealed, well, the most recently revealed one is Greedy Sprite. This is a 3 mana 3/1 druid rare minion, and it reads Death Rattle, gain an empty mana crystal. So uh, my biggest problem with this is its stat line, 3 mana 3/1.
Yeah.
We've seen, what's it, Egg Snapper? Uh, the
Ignapper.
Egg Napper, sorry.
Yeah,
Egg Napper
Ignapper.
kind of maybe it like was originally toyed with a little bit in aggro druids, but then kind of fell out because the 3/1 stat line is just not good enough right now.
Yeah.
Uh, do you think the death rattle of gaining a mana crystal is worth it? An empty one?
I mean, I mean, this is like what a delayed mana, a wild growth in a sense. The fact that it's a death rattle more than immediate is obviously a potential drawback. But I mean, the 3/3 mana 3/1 is probably going to die quite quickly, right? So I mean, in
Yeah,
reality, this you can think of this similar to Jade Blossom in quite a lot of ways, right?
sure. Uh,
I mean,
the biggest
most of
the biggest problem I have when comparing this to Jade Blossom, even though it is 3 mana and you're getting an empty mana crystal, it's that you only get the empty mana crystal usually in your next turn. So you
was the turn
can't
after.
ramp into 4. Well, in your turn, I'm saying, because you're almost always going to probably trade this off in your turn.
Yeah.
You can't value trade with it, so uh, you're always going to end up trading it off in your turn, which means the empty mana crystal you're getting then, which means you still only have 4 mana on that turn rather than 5, so you can't just go like Jade Blossom into Nourish for the ramp plan.
Yeah, it delays it by its extra turn because, like, if you have to trade it away instead of your opponent killing it,
Yeah.
like if your opponent leaves it up, granted they take an extra 3 damage, but in the decks that's ramping, is it
But
three
they
damage
don't
relevant
take
most
3
of the time?
damage because you have to trade it to get the mana. So they don't take any damage. One of their minions takes 3 damage.
Yeah,
Which, I mean, maybe if your opponent is forced to trade into this to not allow you to kill one of their high value targets or something like, I don't know, a Shaku or something like that, then maybe it's good. I do like the mechanic at least. It's kind of enticing your opponent to trade into it because it has such low health. But then also your opponent doesn't want to trade into it because of the death rattle. So that's quite cool. The like dichotomy of having to choose whether you want to trade into it or not. There.
and some important things that one of the comments have on Hotporn kind of addresses that guy really looks like he likes his mana crystal. Why do you want to steal it from him? If you just look at if you look at the picture of the artwork, that guy's like, that's my mana crystal. Why would you do such a cruel thing and take it away from him?
Yeah, but it looks like a full mana crystal there. Why is it empty when you get it anyway? Um, that's something. Does is the inner part of the mana crystal the greedy sprite's soul, and that's why when you kill it, it is empty when you get
What?
it. Wow. Okay.
Mind blown.
Before we go too deep into the philosophy of Hearthstone and whether souls exist in Hearthstone, we can end this special here. Thanks a lot for tuning in. If
Thanks.
you want to find out more from us or find out when cards are revealed, I tend to actually just tweet out these cards with my very first initial thoughts before we even get to doing these videos. So you can find me on Twitter at dib_gaming, and then you can find Pandemonia there at PandemoniaZA. It's with a 3 and a 0 in the places which you can see them here in the picture. So yeah, you can also find us obviously on YouTube and Twitch. On my Twitch channel, or I'll kind of semi-joint YouTube channel. Uh, you can find us there, give us a follow, and like the video. Also comment if you have any other comments about any of these cards. It's definitely appreciated. So thanks a lot, and we will be back soon for the next episode of Magma Rages. And then once all the cards are revealed on the 4th, we're gonna start doing full reviews with ratings for every single one of the classes, and some deck lists, some prospective deck ideas for the first day of launch. So make sure you follow the YouTube channel to find out when that stuff is going to be live.
Cool. Bye.
Cool. Cheers.